I have to start recording. She's here. You can come here and say hello to everybody.
Hello.
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 Okay, she's happy. Well, thank you so much for being here, everybody. I am more than honored to be here today with you and with Professor Anthony Julius. As I said before, he's one of my heroes in my life, and I can honestly say that. So I am a little bit intimidated as well. I watched many podcasts that he has been and participated. And one of the most interesting podcasts, Anthony, may I call you that?
Please.
That Anthony it is called, because I think they are still recording that, Unholy podcast. That was a very nice interview. And Jonathan Friedland, who was presenting the podcast, said, well, Dr. Anthony Julius, a distinguished lawyer from Mishcon de Reya, a scholar and a writer, and according to Stephen Fry, one of the cleverest men I've ever met. So when I heard it the first time, I'm going to say something that Jonathan Friedland said as well, but in another occasion, that it was Spielkes. And it's something in Yiddish that we say that good. I don't know. It's something that we cannot sit down for a moment. So I'm just a simple Jewish girl from São Paulo, and I am interviewing one of the cleverest men in the world. So that's why we are here. Thank you so much. So we are honored to have you here with us. And after watching many interviews and reading a book and studying for this event, I welcome you, these questions and answers. Thank you so much for more than 30 people that are here with us. I'm going to explain some things in Portuguese concerning the book, and then I'm coming back to English. Pessoal, é o seguinte, eu agradeço muito vocês por estarem aqui hoje, mas eu falei com o professor Julius que eu vou adiantar a questão do livro, porque tem uma questão muito interessante para a gente discutir. O livro que está sendo traduzido e vai ser publicado em português chama Abraham the First Jew, Abraão, o primeiro judeu, e é pela Yale Jewish Lives, que é uma coleção da Yale sobre vidas judaicas, que vai desde Abraão até tudo que vocês podem imaginar. Tá? Saiu recentemente uma biografia do Philip Roth, por exemplo, e estão saindo várias, tá? Tem uma coleção, já tem uns 50 títulos que eu me lembre. Bom, o que o professor Anthony Julius fala? E hoje eu vou resumir aqui para a gente ir caminhando e para vocês também fazerem as perguntas, se quiserem, no chat, eu vou traduzindo. Primeiro, ele fez uma coisa muito interessante, que é, ele escreve falando, eu sou um judeu escrevendo sobre outro judeu, ponto. Se você veio ao livro para falar sobre o Abraão islâmico, para entender o Abraão cristão, não é esse o livro. Ele discute sobre o Abraão cristão no epílogo somente. E ele faz uma das coisas mais brilhantes que eu já ouvi alguém fazer, que é ele divide Abraão em duas pessoas. Um Abraão 1 e um Abraão 2. O Abraão 1 é o Abraão de Ur, é o Abraão que tem uma vida de investigação, é o Abraão crítico, é o Abraão questionador, que vai lá e destrói a loja do pai com, né, das estátuas e tudo mais. Não preciso contar a história, né, gente? É ótimo. E que aí ele começa a crise dele quando ele está na fornalha e que ele tem aquelas discussões com Nimrod, com o faraó, e aí na fornalha ele tem essa primeira crise, que ele sai e fala que Deus falou comigo. E aí ele pula, e o Anthony Julius comenta, estamos agora com Abraão 2, que é o oposto desse Abraão, porque aí ele vai ter uma vida de serviço, sem questionamento, vai ser realmente o homem de fé, e aí é o Abraão de Canaã, o Abraão 1 de Ur, o Abraão 2 de Canaã. E aí é um homem de fé, não mais interessado no pensamento crítico, e realmente vai ter uma quebra no momento do sacrifício de Isaac, e como a gente fala em hebraico, e como ele fala no livro inteiro, da Akedah, que é esse momento do sacrifício. E ao final, no epílogo, ele fala da recepção de Abraão depois, pelo mundo. Então, essa divisão dos dois Abraões, é a ideia do livro, que é genial. Tá, certo? Então, aí a gente caminha. So, thank you so much for waiting. I think everybody is now aware of the book, and I think many people are going to buy the book in Portuguese, and I hope so. I hope so, because I want to give many lectures and make some events about it. First of all, Anthony, I would like to know how you came up with the idea to write about Abraham, or how was your invitation to write about this brilliant character, if we may so, and how long did it take to you to write the book?
So first of all, thank you very much, Andrea, for inviting me to talk to you, and thank you also for your work translating the book. I
Thank you so
very much
much.
appreciate it. The prospect of getting some audience in Brazil is very exciting for me, and it would not have been possible without you. So really, thank you very much. The answer to your question, how did I come to write it? There's a kind of immediate answer, and then there's a slightly uh, longer answer. The immediate answer is I was asked by the editor of the series, this
Mhm.
very good series, Yale
Excellent.
Jewish Lives. I was asked to write the biography of the first Jewish United States Supreme Court Justice, Louis Brandeis.
Mhm.
And I thought, distinguished, obviously, though Brandeis was, it did not excite me to write as one lawyer about a very, very much more distinguished person, but still another lawyer.
Mhm.
Um, so I said, in the way in which one plays a version of poker with one's academic and writing colleagues, um, I will see your Louis Brandeis and I will raise you Abraham.
Yes.
So he said, fine. I didn't expect him to agree, but he agreed. So that's how I came to get the commission to write the book for the series. The slightly longer in terms of time explanation is that I have been fascinated and troubled by the Akedah, by the story of the Binding of Isaac, ever since I first came across it in a cartoon history of the Jewish Bible. I read it. I read this cartoon history, or I started reading it when I was 7 or 8,
Okay.
and I got through the account of the creation with no difficulty at all. I mean, the idea that the whole world was created in a matter of a few days by a supernatural being, that was not a problem for me. Um, even the flood, or the uh, killing of Abel by Cain, none of these stories troubled me. But the story of the Akedah I found so disturbing that I even now I remember pushing the book to one side and actually not returning to it. When I related this story to friends, uh, one said to me, "So does that mean you don't actually know what happens in the Bible after the story of Abraham?" And I've had to confess it's true. Moses, who was he? Joshua, who was, and so on. So, uh, writing the book gave me an opportunity to address this childhood discomfort
Perfect.
and try to come to terms with it. You also asked me the question, how long did it take
Yes.
me? From commission to delivery of manuscript, I think perhaps about 2 years, maybe
Yeah.
slightly less than 2 years. But obviously, I've been thinking about the subject for some time beforehand.
Yes, because it is, and then I'm going to tell everybody that, for example, yesterday I was checking the notes from chapter 4, and I was checking the books and having, and that we are writing, if we have the books in Portuguese. So I'm going to for our Brazilian audience, if they want to for our Brazilian readers, so if they want to
Yeah.
check the books that you have been researching. And then I said, well, there are 166 notes only on chapter 4. And I said, well, it's a little bit, it was very, very well researched. So that's why I asked you about the time. And I'm going to invert the question because you said that people asked you, so do you know what happened to Isaac? And I'm going to tell everybody that we read the journey of Abraham and the Akedah sometimes as a suspense novel. And it's very, very interesting. Of course, we know what happens, but I was reading some parts of it to my husband, and he said, no spoilers, please, because that was so funny. And then I'm going to read everybody just a small part of it, then you can be aware, okay? Yeah, it's on page 143. So take a look at how it is written. Trudging up the mountain, which has no path, father and son in heavy silence, in the noonday, airless heat, Abraham's gaze is fixed on the peak. Just before they reach it, Isaac speaks, his voice jarring, and welcome to Abraham. Father, here I am, my son, not breaking his step, treading carefully. Haven't we forgotten something? And then it goes on. So it's brilliant. And I want to ask you that you showed us a society in Ur that is very, very complex and people that are literate. And as you said before, it was not a society full of stupid people or full of imbeciles. This is one of your main goals to show the society that Abraham was born into.
Yes. So perhaps I can give a bit of context to
Please.
that ambition as well. Um, as I think you explained, I picked up one or two words in your
Okay.
exposition in Portuguese. I think you explained that I had a conception of an Abraham. I have a conception of an Abraham one and
Yes.
an Abraham two. The the um, uh, the story of Abraham two, the Abraham of faith, um, is the story that the Torah relates,
Mhm.
and the story of Abraham one, from birth through to expulsion from is the story which is only related midrashically
Mhm.
by rabbinical storytelling as extended commentary on the Torah, but not in the Torah itself. And it's in the Midrash, for example, that the very well-known story of Abraham destroying his father's idols
Yes.
can be found. So there is a question: why is the story of Abraham only picked up, only begun in the Torah so late on in his life?
Mhm.
He's the first patriarch. You would have thought that he merited the same kind of attention from birth through to full maturity that, for example, Moses
Yes.
does and receives. After all, Moses also grows up in a polytheistic society.
Mhm.
The Bible is very ready to give an account of his life in Pharaoh's court, but the same um, interest is not extended
Yeah.
to Abraham. So why? And it's a question that the rabbis asked from quite an early stage in the history of rabbinic commentary. So Nachmanides,
Mhm.
very considerable medieval commentator, said this: why does the Torah, why does Bereshit begin with Abraham in Haran after
Mhm.
he's been thrown out of Ur? And he answers because the Torah does not wish to deal with the stupidities, the follies of idolaters. So I credit Nachmanides for asking the question, but I think the answer that he gives is not a good one. So I wanted to give a slightly better answer.
Mhm.
I wanted to give an answer that actually offered some respect to the complexity and sophistication of the society that Abraham in the end comes to reject. And I wanted to make the contest between Abraham and that society a more equal one. I wanted to give the society of some dignity,
Mhm.
and I wanted my account to reflect what is known of that society, especially by the archaeological investigations in the early part of the 20th century.
It was
So,
absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Very nice. There are some parts of the book that that it was very, I don't know, the part of Lot, that it was very, very funny, not so funny, but I don't know how to say that. We have mixed feelings because you said that Lot is the Jewish people's first schlemiel and the family nudnik. And then I started laughing so much because I thought, well, maybe it's the first time that I hear that. So, how original that was. And had you thought about it before writing the book about his character?
No, you know what it is when you write a book. I mean, it's the same not when it comes to writing something very considered like a book, but it's
Uh-huh.
even when you go to the movies, you watch the film with your friends or your partner, and then you walk out and you're asked the question, what did you think of the film? And it's only when you explain what you thought of the film that you actually know what you thought of the film. So
Exactly.
really when I started writing about Lot, that I knew what I thought about him. And of course, I was predisposed to think of him as the first type of something because my tendency when writing the book was to write about Abraham and everything in his story
Mhm.
as in one way or another the first of something in the Jewish tradition.
Mhm.
So then the question for me was not, is Lot the first of something, but what is he the first of something? And then, of course, the answer was clear. He is the first Schlemiel.
Schlemiel.
He's the person who always ends up the loser through his own foolishness.
It's great. And in spite of the tragedy, there is some humor. And you talk a lot about, not a lot, but of course you mentioned the Jewish humor and mentioned some books about it. And it's very nice, very, very interesting. Well, I don't know, I have some biases because, of course, I love the book and then I am the translator and then I want everybody to read it. So I'm going to say fascinating, beautiful, marvelous for 100 times. So don't worry about it, okay?
I'm not going to interrupt you.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are on the same page. The relationship between Abraham and Sarah is absolutely fascinating as well, and we imagine their dialogues. And for example, Sarah overheard Abraham repeating the prediction given to him. Next year, she would give birth to a son. I will return next year. She laughed to herself. Was she a scoffer too? Why did she laugh? She laughed inside to herself in contemplation of her barren insides. And then it goes on. How did you think about this? Because the relationship of between Sarah and Abraham was very unique, and you gave Sarah a voice. And I think it is one of the most important things of the book. So that was your goal, wasn't it?
Yes. So uh, one of the ambitions that I had for the book was for myself as a writer, was to write it novelistically.
Mm-hmm.
All the other books that I've written have been written very, very much in my own voice.
Yes.
So I thought, why not try something a little different? Because in any event, that's what I think the story demands, which is to write the book in the voices that inhabit the story. And the most important voice, I think, alongside Abraham's, is Sarah's. When I was thinking about how to render Sarah's
Mm-hmm.
voice, I had two principles in my mind. The first principle comes from a statement that Rashi makes, that the commentator,
Mm-hmm.
the scriptural commentator, where he says, as a gloss, as a comment on the exchange that Abraham and Sarah have when Abraham is considering how to address Sarah's demand that Hagar is expelled. Abraham has a vision of God, and God says, you have to listen to Sarah. And Rashi comments, God said that because Sarah is the superior prophet.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first. What did it? Because we don't ordinarily think about or take seriously that principle, that proposition. What does it mean to say, in relation to the first patriarch, Abraham Avinu,
Mm-hmm.
his wife was the superior prophet?
Yes.
So that was the first proposition, and I wanted to explore what that might mean. The second proposition was that patently, but again, not receiving the attention it deserves, I think, in the tradition, Abraham and Sarah have a really bad marriage.
Yes.
And when I was thinking about how to write this story novelistically, my mind went to all those 19th century and early 20th century examples, the great novels of bad marriages.
Mm-hmm.
Madame Bovary, Anna Karenina, and so on. So not that I had Flaubertian or Tolstoyan
Tolstoyan. No,
in my
okay.
book, obviously not, and lahavdil, as we say, but I thought as a kind of form for my investigation that was the relevant form. So a superior prophet and an unhappy wife.
Yes.
And I write the account of Sarah out of and by reference to those two principles, those two propositions, to the point where I felt towards the end of writing the book that really what I would have wanted would have been to have written a book called Abraham and Sarah.
Yes.
That I would have wanted to write, if you like, a collective biography of the two of them rather than the biography of Abraham.
But in a certain way, the first part of the book, you wrote, yes, about their relationship and everything. Yes. Anna Karenina is Anna Karenina your favorite novel ever? Is it possible to ask you that?
Yes, and yes.
Yes and yes. Okay, thank you. Because sometimes it's so hard for us that read a lot and teach and everything. Oh, what's your favorite novel? If you ask me, I have like 100, or not 100, but 10. But to come with this answer, I think it's very, very, I don't know how to say that.
Well, I don't know, maybe it shows that I haven't read enough novels, but I've always been very moved by, I mean, obviously it's a work of genius and it has very considerable formal complexity and human understanding and so on, all of that.
Mhm.
But I was also very moved, particularly by the account that Tolstoy gives of the character of Levin.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. I think one of the most important Jewish ideas that we have on Abraham is the idea that that we live in a society, or Judaism is lived in contradictions. We live with a dichotomy, and I think at the moment that you understand that as being Jewish, I think it gives you peace. This is my point of view. And then I'm going to, of course, you mentioned my master, that is Abraham Joshua Heschel, that he's right here with me, for example. And then when you started talking about dichotomy and why we are this dichotomous people, and the moment you made this clear, and then I remember the most important, for me, the polarity of Judaism that Heschel talks about in Good in Search of Man, that I think it's the same idea. I don't know if you remember this passage. Yes?
Please read it. Please read it.
Okay, it's like Jewish thinking and living can only be adequately understood in terms of a dialectic pattern containing opposite or contrasted properties. As in a magnet, the ends of which have opposite magnetic qualities, these terms are opposite to one another and exemplify a polarity which lies at the very heart of Judaism. And then he gives many examples. The polarity of ideas and events, mitzvah and sin, kavanah and deed, regularity and spontaneity, uniformity and individuality, halacha and agadah, law and inwardness, and then until he says of the word and that which is beyond words, of man's quest for God and God in search of man. I remember when we had a group, Anthony, that a research group about contemporary Judaism, and we discussed this passage as central to Jewish life for many, many weeks. What do you think about it, and how do you explain this on your book?
So I didn't. I don't claim that I discovered the dichotomous
No, okay.
character of Judaism. I want to do two things. First of all, I wanted to elicit it and show how it goes back to, and in a sense starts with Abraham. That was the first thing I wanted to do as a kind of contribution to the understanding of this constitutive dichotomy, or
Yeah.
rather, this constitutive dichotomizing
Mm-hmm.
as a practice.
Yes.
Our tendency is to dichotomize when we explain Jewish phenomena. That was the first thing I wanted to do, to, so to speak, give a point of origin. The second thing I wanted to do was to avoid all comfort, which not in Heschel, but with others, tends towards the sentimental, the belief that these binarisms are all reconciled in
Mm-hmm.
some way in Judaism. So yes, there are these tensions, there are these binary polarities, but the moment of celebration, Judaism reconciles them all, understands what it is. Even a little bit of that creeps into Heschel, where he talks about the dialectical relation.
Yes.
My dialectics is a kind of, to borrow an expression from Adorno, a negative dialectics.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all about the impossibility of reconciliation, the
Mm-hmm.
way in which we kind of lurch from one polarity to the
To the
other
other.
without ever finding our balance.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, dichotomy, but origin in Abraham and the instability of our engagement
Mm-hmm.
as we navigate our way through life by reference to these dichotomies.
Perfect. And by the end of the book, Coda, you talked about examples of some scholars and some writers that wanted to force Jesus into the picture and comparing Jesus with Isaac. For me, of course, it was something very new because I'm not, I don't study Jesus or New Testament. Of course, we know Brazil is a very Catholic country. Of course, we know all the stories, but it hasn't come to my mind that, well, did people do that? Make this connection? It was, and sometimes it was a surprise. Do you think it's going to be a surprise for Jewish readers here, or what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, and maybe for an interesting historical reason, which is
Mhm.
that Jews have rarely returned to Christians the interest that Christians have in Judaism,
Yes.
which is part of the offense given to Christians by Jews. So it's possible that for that reason, which is, millennial
Hmm.
in its character, it will
Yes.
be a surprise.
Yes, very, very much. And then you talk a lot about the period of the Enlightenment and and why we do not want to be the Abraham of the Akedah, and why until today we still come to that moment. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Enlightenment versions
Yeah.
of Abraham, please.
Yes. So the philosopher perhaps that I most uh, uh, admire, um, the person to whom I have most frequently have reference, not just for the kind of substance of the arguments, but also for his ambition to structure his arguments
Hmm.
in a way which has a kind of architectonic, is Immanuel Kant.
Yes.
And of course, Kant was an object of huge admiration by generations of German Jewish philosophers. One thinks of Hermann Cohen, but only Cohen among many others. Um, and yet, Kant, apart from the usual Enlightenment disparagements of Jews, had a particular take on the Akedah, which was hostile, so hostile that he made of Abraham the very antitype of the Enlightenment hero. The Enlightenment hero is the person who thinks for him herself, the morally autonomous person, the
Yes.
person who gives the moral law to himself
Mhm.
as a self-legislator. That, for Kant, is the precise opposite of Abraham, who, under the most extreme of circumstances, submitted to the law of the other,
Mhm.
whose ethical position was fully heteronymous rather than autonomous, who listened to a voice outside of himself telling him to do something which was patently wrong
Mhm.
and was ready to do it nonetheless. Kant said Abraham um, uh, knew with utter certainty from the moral law within that it was wrong to kill his son. So why did he listen to a voice from without when he could not be certain that it wasn't, for example, Satan impersonating God's voice?
Absolutely.
There
Yes.
is an accent of contempt
Mhm.
in Kant's account of
Yes.
Abraham. And so what I wanted to do in my book was two things, because the Abraham 1 account that I give is precisely the Abraham of the Enlightenment, the
Mhm.
person who breaks with his milieu
Yes.
and asserts the dignity and autonomy of reason.
Perfect.
So
Yes.
I wanted to assert the dignity of Judaism against Kant,
Mhm.
but I also wanted to assert um, the inescapable and critical importance of the Enlightenment inside Judaism.
Perfect.
So I had that double
Mm,
ambition.
perfect. And you said, and connecting to that, there are many mentions of Maimonides. Of course, we're not talking about the Enlightenment anymore, but Maimonides said, and you, of course, you make this point, as Abraham as the first philosopher as well. So I think this is the first, the Abraham one being a philosopher and the man of the Enlightenment, and Abraham two is the result and the faith and not enlightened at all. That's the idea, yes?
Yes, and I mean, again, this is not if you like, my idea. I
Mhm.
take it from Maimonides, and then
Yes.
as we say in English, I run with it.
Hmm.
In Maimonides' account
Hmm.
in the Mishnah Torah is of Abraham as the first philosopher, the
Yes.
person who, for the first time in human history, uses his reason to work his way through to a conclusion which is independent of the society in which he lives and which has not been given to him.
Hmm. Perfect. Yes. Uh, can we talk about Deborah Lipstadt? Are you tired of answering questions about the case?
No, no,
No.
not at all. Deborah is a very, very, very dear friend of mine and someone who it's been a privilege in my life to have known and worked with. So I'm always happy to talk about Deborah, and of course, happy to talk about the case, however irrelevant that case may be to our present conjuncture as a Jewish world.
Yes, that's the point that I am trying to make here. Of course, there was an event at Mishcon de Reya about the 25-year anniversary of the case, and it's available, everybody. I can send you the link later, but you can look for it on Google. That is 25 years after the Irving Lipstadt case. Deborah was reunited with you and James Lipson, etc., and with the director of the film, etc. And then you said this case was about more than one individual's reputation. It was about defending the very idea of truth itself. In today's world, where misinformation is widespread and facts are increasingly contested, revisiting the lessons from 25 years ago is more relevant than ever. The fight for truth is ongoing. We fight in order to survive until the next. The victories are always critical, but never final. And then yesterday we had another pogrom. Yes. And how do you connect everything? Of course, you can connect in many ways, but our Jewish lives are very troubled, to say the least. But how can you discuss these topics?
But this is why, Andrea, this is why I have a sense of the remoteness
Yes.
of the case to our present concerns. Um, they were easier, simpler, and less threatening times.
Hmm.
Why? Because the threat was purely discursive,
Hmm.
and because it could be addressed decisively in the forum of a court,
Yes.
in front of a judge. There is no um, decisive response, discursive response to two men firing randomly into a crowd of Jews on the first day of Hanukkah
Hmm. Yes.
or Erev Hanukkah. So there is no lesson to be derived from the Lipstadt case, which can be applied to this one, other than at the very abstract level. But the very, I think, important level, which is that we must always give fight when attacked by our enemies.
Perfect. Yes.
The form that that fight takes, of course, now is radically different to the form that it took in the Lipstadt case.
Mm-hmm. When a fight is offered, fight back. That's what you said at the time as well. You have to choose and fight the battle that you are offered. Yes. Now we have a fight. We have some, I think, the most horrible lesson, not lessons, but social media. We have social media. Do you follow social media? Do you read things that people say? Are you connected to Instagram or Twitter?
I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on X.
Lucky you.
Well, it's a choice I
Of
made.
course, yes.
It's also a function, no doubt, of my age and my circle. We don't communicate very much with each other in that way. I think, well, I don't communicate at all. There are sites that I subscribe to
Mm-hmm.
and read, but they're all newspaper sites, commentary sites, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of, in that sense, somewhat insulated from that world, and no doubt it makes my perspectives somewhat limited, of limited value and interest, I think, because the contemporary world is moving further and further away from my general understanding of where I am and the world as I write about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it's a very wise choice, and I think many of us that would have this option. Unfortunately, I don't. I have to be on social media with some other people, but because of my job. So there is a question here. We can go to the questions, everybody. So the Edivaldo, that is one of our researchers, he says that thank you for these amazing opportunities and apologies for not reading your brilliant book. And he has a more theological question. We all know the well-known biblical sentence, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, which apparently makes a distinction on particular perceptions of God. I don't know whether your book reflects about the notion that God, the divine, relates to individuals differently, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or maybe it is in fact men who build their own different perceptions of God. Even if your book does not deal with this issue, would you please elaborate that? Thank you so much.
So thank you very much for that extremely interesting question. And the short answer is I do not address that.
Mhm.
Of course, I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of the distinct readings of that formulation. The one reading being there are three ways to understand the human engagement with the divine, one associated with Abraham, one associated with Isaac, and one with Jacob, and the alternative reading, which is that we understand from it that in fact there is a different understanding or relation to God with
Mhm.
every human being, and that those three names are merely the first names in an infinite series of names. I mean, for myself, I prefer the second because, quite apart from anything else, it seems to reflect the reality. Although, again, to complicate the answer, many people think the same way because that's in the nature of the way in which traditions are typically received, somewhat passively. But I think it's a super interesting question, and if I were to be planning to write a sequel to the book, then no doubt it would be something that I would have to address.
Yes, Abraham 3. You answered this question, yes, on the book. I said, well, there is no Abraham 3, but maybe Abraham 3 is like flourishing right now, or something like
Maybe,
that. Maybe,
maybe.
maybe. There's another question here. I don't know if this is a smart question. Every question is smart, don't worry. But at the same time that you dealt with strategies in dealing with Irving throughout the process, how do we deal with deniers? How do you say that? Deniers? Holocaust
Deniers.
deniers
Yeah.
today? What would have you changed? What you would have changed?
Well,
Be- Mhm. No, I'm
sorry.
sorry. No, I'm
Finish the
sorry
sentence.
because everybody should watch the film, for example, or read the book. There is the book in Portuguese. Denial was translated into Portuguese, so we have this book in Portuguese. And then the strategy is to make him talk. And Deborah Lipstadt and the survivors did not speak a word. So it was a brilliant thing to do. Of course, all the world has already told you that. But how do we deal with the deniers today?
Um, One of the reasons why I'm skeptical of the continuing utility or even relevance of the trial to
Mhm.
today's conditions is precisely because what one cannot, deal with denial in that way. It's a kind of incontinent vomiting over us
Yes.
of overwhelming quantities and force. And so I think that that the challenge is of a different character. It is to refuse to allow it to distract us from projects that have creative value and meaning for us individually and as a community.
Mhm.
So we fight when fighting is a necessary response,
Yes.
but otherwise we we disregard the noise
Mhm.
where we can. I gave the example because this was something I've been thinking about during the trial itself. I gave the example of somebody who is walking in the countryside and walks across a field of cows and treads in a cow pat,
Mhm.
and finds when he comes to back to his home, um, the cow pat on the shoe. And
Mhm.
obviously, what he's going to do is he's going to clean it off, wash it off, leave the shoes at the door, but then go into the house and have his meal, talk to his family, and not think anymore about the
Of course, forget
fecal
about it. Yeah.
gas that's stuck on his shoe. I sometimes think that we are at risk of spending too much time at looking at the shit on our shoes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I say that as somebody who wrote 1,000-page book on anti-Semitism before you challenge me with that observation.
I'm going to, this is the 1,000-page book. I highly
Right.
recommend it to you, but I'm going to say something nice to our Brazilian audience here. It's just, I bought this book a couple of months ago at a used store a used store online website, whatever, and it
Yeah.
was like £5. See how nice? And it is a perfect condition, so everybody should read that. And then for our final question, well, everybody, there are many people here from our Jewish community, and of course, Anthony, everybody's very, I don't know, more than upset. Well, uh, and Daniela, she asks, Mr. Julius, do you have any advice for us on how to fight against these new forms of anti-Semitism now that legal processes may be insufficient or only come too late in the face of explicit violence? And Dani is also a lawyer, so I think she she's worried about it.
Well, where it is possible to take legal action and the risk of losing that action is not too high,
Mhm.
then of course, where it is possible to counter denial in the universities, for example,
Yes,
by reasoned exposition, then that route. I don't find any value in seeking out deniers in order to debate with them, because their positions are not positions in good faith.
of course.
They're actuated by malice
Mhm.
and by a kind of invincible, unconquerable stupidity and ignorance.
Mhm. Perfect. Yes, I agree with you entirely. And that's the idea that we have here. And we have always been talking about it. Choose the people that you want to talk to because not everybody wants to listen to you, and it's not worth your time and anything.
Yeah,
So, yes, Bruna, there is this book in Portuguese. It's called, I don't know, Anthony's books. The first book is going to be in Portuguese next year, but the book about the film is Negação. That is denial in Portuguese, that is available for everybody. You should watch the film and thank you, Anthony, so much for being here with us. And everybody, I think the books are going to be on bookstores in February. I think at the beginning of the month, they're already going to be there.
wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I'm going to thank you 100 times for being with us, and we are looking
So
forward to
thank
the
you to
book.
my audience. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you, Andrea, for being such a wonderful translator and interlocutor for me.
Thank you so much, everybody. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.